Today and Across the Fence, working with Vermont farmers and landowners to reclaim pasture land. We'll find out how to make a forest into a field where animals fit in, and we'll answer the question, to stump or not to stump. Good afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. Vermont's forests and valleys have gone through a lot of changes in the past 200 years. What were once pristine forests became pasture land for sheep. But when wool production went west, the forests began to reclaim the land. Well, now some landowners are looking to take back the forest in order to once again raise livestock. The clear-cut difference between now and then is how the land is being managed to maximize production and promote sustainability. Across the Fence's Keith Silva has our report.
When Sarah Nolan and her family moved from Alaska to Vermont, she had an idea of what she wanted.
I always say I want to have a farming business that does not consume every aspect of my life. So that's what we're doing. We have 2 young children, and obviously they take a lot of work. My husband works full-time, I work part-time, so we just don't have the ability to dedicate 100% of our time to it. So we're just hoping that we could grow a moderate-sized business with a variety of animals.
The Nolans moved here in 2010, hired a logger, and began the process of turning forest back into pasture.
You could tell it had been logged before some of the big trees had been taken off, but it was pasture 25 years ago, and we have a lot of other woods on this place, and we really had the desire to bring some of it back into pasture. So I remember at the time looking at the trees and not really being able to envision what it was going to look like, just that all the trees were going to be gone. And even then, as they started cutting them off, I kept going, okay, I still can't see, and then all of a sudden, all this open space. It was kind of neat to see that transformation.
It wasn't until the loggers left that the real work could begin.
It's, coming up here and digging things up by hand, bringing machinery up to get rid of some of the the new growth, because it will come back immediately. So by the next year, it's every year, every day, picking up a lot of brush just from the loggers. We had some good loggers, but there's always a little bit of a mess made. So going around, picking up all the brush, things like that, it's just very, very labor intensive.
This state wants to grow trees, and the soils really like to grow trees.
Dan Hudson is an agronomist with University of Vermont Extension. He's pleased with what the Nolans have done and how their work has progressed.
They've done a lot of things right. They got the grasses out there rapidly as they could, and that kept a lot of the soil in place. They still had some challenges. They included animals in the process of reclaiming it, and the animals are browsing a lot of the regrowth and depositing manure, and that helps to get the soil biology working for them. I think they've chosen good grasses to include, and they worked hard. They were not afraid to get out here and do a lot of manual labor.
One of the gnarliest questions a landowner faces when reclaiming pasture is what to do with the stumps.
There are pros and cons to stumping. We decided to not stump the whole thing because it's very expensive to get all the stumps removed, and then also it disturbs a lot of the topsoil that could be critical to getting that new grass established. So we opted to just stump a few areas that we felt were problem areas that we couldn't keep up with, and to leave the other stumps. Problem with leaving stumps is if you do want to mow and get rid of things like, let's say, blackberries or raspberries that seem to come in first, then it's nice to be able to mow after the animals have grazed it. Stumps make it very difficult to do that, so use an old mower.
Logging the land, increasing soil fertility, and planting grass seed are the first steps to pasture recovery. What comes next is a whole other animal, or animals.
I generally tell people, get some animals soon, but don't get too many, and get some exposure to the animals so you understand what you're dealing with. So if you can work with a neighbor that has the class of animals that you're interested in having, you can learn from them, you can manage them, you can use them to address nutrient issues on your pasture. It's a win-win for everybody if you're understanding as you go into it that it's going to be a lot of work.
It's definitely looking better.
UVM Extension has helped Nolan from the beginning. This new Vermonter says Extension's knowledge and expertise has helped her family feel right at home.
You know, I'm not a soil expert, so I can look at a soil sample and go, okay, it's nutrient deficient, but I don't know how to correct that. So the UVM extension has been very helpful in helping me make decisions about what kind of seed to get, what kind of fertilization, if anything. We've also done a lot of pasture walks where people come and we walk around and I say, this is what we've done. And the people who come to the pasture walk say, hey, have you thought about doing this or that? Well, maybe I would do it this way. And I've learned a lot from that too. And those have all been sponsored by UVM Extension. So we've actually used UVM Extension a lot since we've been here.
Like the saying goes, pasture wasn't built in a day. Nolan's advice for would-be farmers: take small bites.
Start small and then grow from there. Ultimately, I just like to have a nice pasture that doesn't require as much maintenance, that we can put animals on, either our animals or somebody else's animals. In the beginning, I had these ideas of coming up here and having just this beautiful green pasture, no stumps, you know, a few trees here and there, nice big maples to kind of make it really beautiful and scenic. And now I'm just you know, I'm just hoping to get it cleaned up. I know that this is going to take many years to look as good as I would like it to, but as long as I'm seeing progress every year, then I'm happy.
Vermont's forests and fields are what give Vermont its identity. But it's an effort from farmers and foresters working together that makes Vermont's working landscape work. In Corinth, I'm Keith Silva with Across the Fence.
Well, joining me now is Jen Colby. Jen is the coordinator of the Pasture program with UVM Vermont Extension's Center for Sustainable Agriculture. It's great to have you back.
Hi, Judy.
How long does it take for forest land to be converted to usable pasture land?
Well, it converts at different levels at different speeds. Mm-hmm. So obviously, as you could see in Sarah's example, you can cut the trees right away. That's fairly quick, and then you sort of expose the bare soil. You can get some seed down, and your seed will start to come up sort of, you know, fairly immediately, and you can start to graze the animals within a few months if you're bringing in animals. Takes a little bit longer to change the soils that are at the base level of that. Sarah mentioned that you know, some raspberries, blackberries will come back. Those are species that really like a little bit more acidic soil, more like a forest soil. Mm-hmm. So it's going to take probably 5 to 7 years to really change the biology and the chemistry in the soil. The chemistry, you can sort of hasten that, mm-hmm. You know, with adding some amendments, but the biology is going to take a little bit longer. So we can get some immediate results in about a year, and then a little less than that, but Sarah will continue to see better and better results in those pastures over the next few years.
So you really have to see this as a long-term project.
It is a long-term project. There are things that you can do to shorten that, which are, you know, generally include money.
Yeah.
It can include equipment, you know, the choices of whether to stump or not to stump. Mm-hmm. That's a trade-off lots of times of time versus money. You can certainly drill stumps and let the water in and encourage fungal communities that will break down those stumps. That's what happens naturally in a forest. But I certainly know folks who've really wanted that picture of the beautiful smooth pasture, and that requires stumping and dragging and smoothing, and it's a pretty expensive process.
So when converting from forest to pastures, does all of the woody material need to be picked up?
It sort of depends upon how you want to manage it. The point was a really good one about whether you think that you're going to want to clip those pastures. What some people will do is actually pile up the woody material into not only piles or maybe lanes. Mm-hmm. That provides a great place for wildlife to come while still clearing a lot of open areas so that you can clip around.
And sort of naturally let it...
Exactly, and not feel like you have to spend the money on chipping it or burning it, and that can still break down naturally too. Mm-hmm. So,
what are some of the other ways to manage the leftover materials from a logging operation?
Well, I mean, you certainly can consider chipping. You could do it in a couple of different ways. You can do it in long rows, or you can do it in large piles and allow the animals to come. Or another possible way is to not cut some of that material. You can actually put animals into forested areas for shorter periods of time, and depending upon the animal, they may break down, step on, crush. You know, they'll start to break down some of the woody material themselves. So we don't always have to do it. We can think of the animals as tools sometimes and help them to do what they naturally do to help us.
And so what kind of animals are we talking about?
So it sort of depends upon what your slope is. I've been to Sarah's farm, and they have some pretty steep slopes. So I think that the choice of sheep is a really good one there because they're easier on the soil. They have a lighter hoof. But if you're thinking about breaking down, crushing, small saplings, using a lot of sort of body language. I'm
bigger animals.
Right there. Bigger animals like cattle can work really, really well. If you want to do some silvopasture, so that you're not necessarily looking to cut the trees, you just want to open up some of the understory, you can put cattle in for short periods, and they'll actually take down some of those small trees and leave the larger ones. But they also have a tougher hoof. They're much heavier on the land, and they can also create a lot more erosion than sheep or goats can. And goats love to browse. So goats will actually strip small saplings and trees and kill them that way.
And so what about using a variety of these animals? I guess that would make the most sense.
Totally.
You'd have to really plan it well, though.
Totally, and that's part of what we encourage with a managed grazing situation, is that you're really aware of the pros and cons of the animals that you choose and the application of those animals. So when we encourage using animals to do any kind of a reclamation, we really do encourage rotating those animals, trying not to leave them in an area longer than 3 or 4 days, or ideally less than that, because that will help to grow stronger pasture plants, and they'll hold the soil better when they are cut off and then they get to rest.
Is cutting large open areas the best way to increase use of pasture or a forest system? It
kind of depends upon what you're hoping, what your goals are. Ultimately, if you want to have an open vista, you can certainly go through and do some cutting of the trees themselves and go through the process like the Nolans have. If you're looking to get the most from a pasture without necessarily losing the trees, you can do some selective cutting. You can cut to keep islands of trees for shade or shelter, or lanes of trees, so that you can still clip in between them. So I wouldn't say that there's a best way, or a more ideal, but it really depends upon the goals of the farmer. There are many farmers who are looking to have another product, so they don't necessarily want to lose the trees.
Right.
But there are farmers who really want a nice open space, and they want the ability to hay as well, and collect winter feed as well as summer feed.
And so that's, I guess, where pasture walks are so interesting, because you can see what people are doing.
Totally.
See if it will work for you, and see if that helps with your long-term goals.
Totally. One of the workshops that we held at the Nolans, we invited some farmers who had been through this process on their own places, and some of them, folks with 40 or more years of grazing experience, really knowledgeable people, and just the conversation was so helpful. It was helpful for Sarah, but it's helpful for all of us, just to say, okay, you do this, well, why would you do this? It really helps all of us try to figure out what is the best choice for ourselves.
And so now you spearhead the annual Vermont Grazing and Livestock Conference, which is at the end of this week. Tell our viewers a little bit about that.
I do, and I'm very excited to talk about it. This year, some of our highlights include a low-stress livestock handling session on Friday with live cattle, and a rainfall simulator in by the pool at Lake Maury Resort, so that will be exciting, to talk about how water runs off soil, which we don't usually get to talk about this time of year, so that's a little exciting in itself. And then on Saturday, we have a 4-H group coming in to talk about swine showing, and they're bringing swine.
Oh, nice. So live animals.
Live animals on Friday and Saturday. We have not been able to manage that in the past, so I'm excited that we're doing it.
And now where is it being held again?
The Lake Maury Resort in Fairleigh, Vermont. And it's Friday and Saturday.
And if folks want to register?
They are welcome to visit our website at uvm.edu/pasture up on the screen. And then also, if they wake up Friday or Saturday morning and they want to come over, walk-ins are always welcome.
Terrific. Well, thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, Judy.
Great to touch base with you again. That's our program for today. I'm Judy Simpson. We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.
For a video copy of today's program, call toll-free 1-888-ATF-3430. Across the Fence is brought to you as a public service by University of Vermont Extension and WCAX-TV.